Joining me now, three of my favorite political analysts, all CNN contributors, Republican strategist Ed Rollins, who served as White House political director and chairman of the Mike Huckabee presidential campaign, syndicated columnist, professor at Lehman College, Miguel Perez, and Democratic strategist, national committeeman Robert Zimmerman. Good to see you all. Let's start with the banks. I thought the Obama administration was about transparency, accountability. Ooh, not so much, huh?
Oh, trust me. You're going to see. Don't trust. Okay, don't trust me.
But I'm not going to
don't trust me. But the reality is, even as Luis Schiavone's piece points out, ultimately this information is going to be made public. I think there is a concern about how to make it public without causing.
How about this? We tell the American people this condescending, patronizing arrogance on the part of this Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, and this president, who promised transparency. There isn't a sell-by date, but we've already gone past the date when it's appropriate. It's time to be straight up and square with the American people who can handle it. We're a big, big nation with smart people.
And we've never had more transparency in our federal government, whether it's regarding the issue of how our stimulus money is being spent or how the earmarks are being appropriated. And when it comes to this issue, I believe we're going to see
Elizabeth Warren, Professor Warren, the chairman of the congressional oversight of TARP, can't even get the Secretary of the Treasury to respond to her. My God, Robert, that's the fact.
Lou, I'm sure that, in fact, Secretary Geithner is going to respond to her. He's only been in office for perhaps a month and a half. I think we have to understand the administration just beginning.
$700 billion in taxpayer money is out there now. But we're having too much fun, and let's not crowd out our friends and colleagues. Ed Rollins, I didn't think much of the Bush White House. I'm starting not to think much of this one.
Well, I think the bottom line here is that it's an easy thing to do, and you got to live up to your commitments. He's lived up to many of his other commitments, but this one's very important. The vast majority of Americans today are very concerned about where their money's going. They don't know if this money's being spent well, and the fact that it's going to come out 6 months from now doesn't matter. He said it'd be out today. He promised to put everything on the internet. It should be on the internet. Should be disclosed. Should be disclosed the front page of the New York Times.
Miguel?
When you look at this from the perspective of the American people, the taxpayers, and they know, believe me, Lou, they know how much we have to answer to the banks when we borrow money from the banks. And for the government to be protecting the banks in any way after they borrowed money from us, it's absurd, and the American people definitely want that clarity. They want that transparency.
Well, we also now have a new initiative for this president who doesn't have enough challenges apparently facing him. He wants to take on comprehensive immigration reform. Robert, these folks are just, it's amazing to me.
Well, the good news is the priorities remain energy, health care, and getting this economy back on track, economy being number one. And I think that's important. What they really have done is just begin the process of setting up a structure to begin the process of hopefully addressing first and foremost border and port security. And I must tell you something, if they don't make that the first priority from the congressional leadership I've spoken to, there will be no immigration reform.
Well, I can see zero possibility of that happening. When you have a Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano, I thought Michael Chertoff, the Republican head of Homeland Security, was an absolute oaf and useless. She may be an aggressively useless secretary. I mean, she's issuing work visas to people picked up in workplace raids. I mean, what are we doing here?
Well, the problem is we're spending all this money on stimulus. We're trying to create jobs. We could build a fence. If they would build a fence, I think lots of Republicans, lots of conservatives would be willing to look at other elements of a bill. But we don't believe if we legalize the individuals who are here illegally at this point in time, they will ever shut that border. And I think to a certain extent, you've got to have, and I don't think they're going to. I think they're basically going to have a comprehensive bill, and the bill will give a path to citizenship with no other.
That would be a prescription for failure and for another amnesty down the line, and I don't think the American people would go for that. I really think that we need, I am all for a comprehensive reform plan, but it has to establish that from now on, no more illegal immigrants will come into the country.
Just like they did in 1986.
Well, if you can't
we're going to be back with Miguel on our panel in just a moment. But first, at the top of the hour, no bias, no bull. Roland Martin in for Campbell Brown. Roland, what do you got?
Well, Luke, could the pirates holding American Captain Richard Phillips be joining forces with other outlaws on the high seas? And are they planning a showdown with American warships? We'll have the latest on the hostage drama in the Indian Ocean, plus all the details on Captain Phillips' daring midnight escape attempt. We'll also be joined by a panel of experts who will give us their assessment of what the United States can really do now and whether it's time for strikes on the pirates' homeland of Somalia. That's all at the top of the hour, Lou.
Isn't it amazing, Roland, to think we're talking about 4 pirates in a 20-foot boat with 1 hostage, 3 U.S. warships, and I mean, this thing has reached a level that's almost unfathomable and unimaginable.
And this is simply one effort, and there are other ships that have been hijacked.
All right. Roland, look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Roland Martin. A Florida woman gave police an extremely accurate report of a break-in at her home, that because she was watching it happen live on her webcam. Jean Thomas watching from her office when she saw men ransacking her home. She immediately called the police department.
This is crazy. They've got things in their hands. Ma'am, it's okay. Officers are surrounding your house. They're not going to get away with anything. Okay, all right. No, my cat's scared. Ma'am, I need you to calm down, okay? I'm sorry. I've just been robbed of everything. No, you haven't, because your items are still going to be in that house. No, but they robbed me before. That's why I have the video camera.
Well, police quickly responded. They arrested all 4 suspects. I don't know about you, as I watched that unfold, I didn't think there was a way in the world that the police or the sheriff's office there in Florida could get there in time. They did. They got all 4 suspects, recovered $3,000 worth of Thomas's possessions. She spent $250, by the way, on the webcam. She says it was a bargain. More with our political panel in one moment. Stay with us.
Color of perfection.
Excellence in flight. Korean Air.
My mom is pretty proud of me. She thinks I can do anything, and she's a character. It became very obvious to me that my mother needed me. I could just tell by her voice that she was declining. I had to give up my job and went to her, and because I wasn't working, got behind in my payments. I got some pretty good advice. Basically, it was communicate with your card company.
If you're struggling to make payments, your credit card companies are here to help.
I really felt that I had a human being on the other end of the phone.
We've come together to let consumers know how we can help. Call us.
You know, it's just a new beginning. What does hope look like? Sometimes it's a hug or a laugh, and sometimes it's a future without worry. But most of all, hope looks like these children and me, who live with type 1 diabetes. The Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation continues to accelerate the crucial research that represents the real hope for a cure for millions of children and adults. Their hope is boundless, and with your help, we'll find a cure.
CNN next. Nothing's off limits when Roland Martin steps in at 8. Roland Martin on CNN coming up next.
If you've been injured in a motor vehicle accident, in a construction site accident, or on the job, you may be entitled to a cash settlement. Call 1-800-972-LAW-1. We're one of New York's largest personal injury law firms handling car accident claims with offices all over New York City and Long Island. We also help victims of defective products and medical malpractice, which can lead to family tragedies including birth injuries, paralysis, brain injuries, or even death. Our experienced attorneys will fight for your rights. Call now, 1-800-972-LAW-1.
Thank you again.
Thank you. So, we've met 3. Who do we list the house with?
You first.
No brainer. Prudential Real Estate. When she showed us that award from J.D. Power and Associates.
That was a good start.
And that online seller advantage thing.
We'll actually see how many people are looking at our home online every day.
Checks neighborhood sales, price changes.
Good to know in this market. And there is the award.
Why don't the other companies have all this?
Doesn't matter. We're using Prudential Real Estate.
Your taxes, the real deal. A CNN 3-day special event starting Monday.
We're back with our panel now. Miguel, you have very strong feelings about Cuba and the Obama administration's decision, apparently, to lift those sanctions.
Well, I hope they don't totally lift the sanctions, Lou. I was born in Cuba, so I do have very strong feelings. But, without negotiating, without preconditions, without using the embargo that we do have for 4 decades now as some leverage to get something in return from the dictatorship in Cuba. I mean, we just can't go there and say, as Representative Barbara Lee just did, that we should establish relationships and then worry about the details of what that means will follow.
Barbara Lee or the Black Caucus be leading this discussion anyway?
It's absurd to me. I mean, Reagan, when he went to China, he had credibility. He was a Republican reaching out to the left. Here's the extreme left wing of the United States going to Cuba. It doesn't have credibility at all.
Let me ask quickly about Joe Biden. Karl Rove says he's a liar. Where do you come down on this, Mr. Republican?
Historically, he's been an embellisher. I think liar is a very strong word, and I wouldn't use that against a vice president, but I think he has a tendency to exaggerate. I would bet the ranch he had never been in a room with the president by himself.
Mr. Democrat.
Not only do I take Joe Biden at his word, the idea that we're even discussing anything Karl Rove says as having any credibility. A man who was the architect of the destruction of the Republican Party, not to mention the politicalization and criminalization of the Department of Justice, and of course, one of the great leaders of the strategy for the failed Iraq War. The idea that Karl Rove is even in the political fray is probably the next best thing to having Rush Limbaugh in the fray for Democrats.
That's a little embellished, Robert.
Could it be that you're both right?
They're both right. Actually, they are both right.
I want to thank all three of you for being with us. It's always good to have you with us. Coming up next, the results of our poll and heroes. Our salute to the men and women who serve this nation in uniform. The story of a combat medic's bravery under fire. We'll be right back.